Hello and welcome back to another episode of Your Absolute Mind, the podcast that is dedicated to inspiring, educating and motivating you to become mentally healthy. I'm your host, Paula Sweet, and today's show is an interview with Christian Bengtsson-Rosby. Now, this is my first ever interview in all the years I've been doing this podcast, so please be nice. Christian is a passionate and an experienced HR technology specialist with over 10 years of experience in multicultural environments. He's currently leading the People Technologies team at Electrolux Group and being part of the team leading their HR transformation journey. He's an experienced and a passionate manager leading both bigger and smaller teams with individuals from all over the world and different backgrounds. First up, I want to say a massive thank you to Christian for his time, his expertise, the insights and the honesty throughout our call. This is a great conversation that we had and so many areas are covered relating to workplace mental health. When I reached out to Christian, I asked him what he'd like to cover in our conversation, and he was open to discuss the title of this podcast, which is We Think It's Time for a Change in the Way Mental Health is Managed Within the Workplace. So before we go into our conversation that we had, here's some of the key points and the takeaways from our conversation. In our chat, we cover the importance of leadership. Now, Christian highlights how the quality of leadership significantly impacts employee mental health. Good leaders can identify and support struggling employees. Next, we identify an individualized approach. One of the critical issues discussed is the reliance on individual managers to support mental health. Now, this often leads to inconsistent support, emphasizing the need for standardized tools and training across all organizations. We identified that we need to create a psychological safety element. So we talk about the necessity of creating an environment where employees feel psychologically safe. So this includes being able to express their true selves, share their concerns and feel valued, which can significantly reduce stress and anxieties. We identified the support for neurodiversity. So Christian sheds light on the unique challenges faced by neurodiverse individuals, such as those with ADHD or autism. He emphasizes the importance of tailored support to help these individuals thrive in the workplace. Next, we discuss technological innovations. We explore how emerging technologies can help us to identify employees at risk of burnout or stress, allowing for a proactive intervention. So this includes tools that analyze behavioral patterns to flag potential issues before they become critical. Next up, we talk about comprehensive health benefits. So the discussion covers the importance of offering comprehensive health benefits, including access to occupational health services, counselling and stress management programs. Then we talk about cultural shifts. So finally, we discuss the broader cultural changes needed within organisations to prioritise mental health, from leadership training to creating inclusive and supportive work environments. So let's dive in. So I just wanted to say thank you for, offering to put up some of your info and your insights into workplace mental health. But before we do jump into talking about the podcast, are you okay to tell me a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Christian Bengtsson-Rosby. I work at Electrolux from our group HR office in Stockholm. I am currently based in London, however, so I have a remote work. I do look after what we call People Technologies, which is everything to do with HR, digital HR software, basically. And I would lead a team of about 20 individuals with different backgrounds and skills in HR and IT to bring together the holistic approach to how we manage our HR platforms, Electrolux, and in a global perspective.
Fantastic. So I'm guessing you have quite an insight into the HR and what we're actually seeing in the workplace to do with mental health. So sounds like you're a perfect candidate for me to speak to.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I studied HR in my university years and sort of spent and with the focus on psychology and organizational behavior.
Fab.
So I have spent my entire career in the field, and I guess also in this specific topic, what's also obviously interesting right now is the emergence of basic technology to support this for organizations, right? Because it is a big problem and it's a big issue, and it costs a lot of money for organizations to lack the right resources to deal with it properly.
Yes, yeah, of course. So Obviously, I sent you a few options of titles of podcasts that I wanted to discuss and cover, and you picked the podcast title of "We Think It's Time for a Change in the Way Mental Health is Managed Within the Workplace." Can I ask what was it about that title that you thought, you know what, that's what I want to talk about? That one kind of stood out to you. What was it?
Um, I think it was a little bit a mix of everything, both sort of having people close to me struggling with mental health in the workplace, and
Yeah.
also supporting colleagues who've been going through this, and also maybe seeing how it's affecting and happening, around me, with not necessarily affecting me directly, or people,
Yeah.
that I sort of would look after directly either. I feel like it's we talk a lot about it, but I'm not
Yes.
necessarily sure that companies know how to act on it. I think
Yes.
my overall reflection on it is that how well it's being dealt with
Mm-hmm.
is very much still down to the individual. That's, if you are the person struggling,
Yeah.
is very much around who do you have around you in regards to your HR business partner or your manager, right? It is still very much individually based.
Yeah.
If you have a good manager with a good eye for these things, you will have a lot of good help, hopefully, and support.
Yeah,
But if you
absolutely.
are not fortunate enough to have that, because not everyone, everyone isn't a good leader
Mm-hmm.
and good with these things, right? Then the support that you will get will be different. And I
Yes.
think that is where the companies has problems, that you're very much relying on individuals to pick up and, get stuck in and help where help needs to be. But there isn't necessarily enough tools to do it consistently.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start the series on the podcast covering this, just to try and highlight it a little bit more, to try and get us to understand how we can help, and what does need to be implemented, and how can things change for the workplace. So hopefully, with a bit more talking about it from people like myself and you and others that I've seen, that we can start to make big changes. Now, you mentioned that
Yep.
obviously, you've been around people, you've not necessarily personally experienced issues yourself, but some of the things that you've seen within workplaces, or whether that be friends, family, colleagues, what's some of the examples that you've seen that people have been struggling and maybe they haven't got the right support, or even,
Mm.
they have had the right support and it's worked out brilliant for them and they've managed to turn things around?
Well, I think it depends on what perspective you would be referring to. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think that if we talk about mental health in the workplace, I guess a lot of people will typically think about burnout,
Yep.
anxiety, stress, anxiousness.
Yep.
But typically, I mean, burnout is obviously the most common one, that you kind of you work yourself into the ground for
Yep.
a variety of reasons, right? Um, I think, I guess the second one is sort of being anxious or feeling comfortable, like, the concept of psychological safety at
Mm-hmm.
work, that you feel like you're supported, and um, you have people around you where you can be yourself, or you can allow yourself to be your true self, or speak up, or share concerns and so on, right? And feeling valued and so on, right? And how do you create an environment where everyone can feel like that? Because you
Yep.
also, humans are different. Some people speak their mind regardless, and some people need to feel a lot of psychological safety to be able to speak up, right? So that's the second part, where you can struggling more. Maybe your mental health is not about the amount of hours or overtime, but it's
Yep.
about not feeling safe, right?
Yes. Yeah, of
Um,
course.
I think a third element here is, which is interesting, is also mental health issues that stems from other areas, for example, like neurodiversity, or
Mm-hmm.
people struggling with ADHD or autism, where there's so much unknown still around this. Like, the way we diagnose now compared to even 10, 15 years ago is different. For somebody who might be struggling massively at work, is not because they maybe are, you know, burnt out, or well, they might still be, but maybe that reason is because they don't have the setup and the structure around them to perform. I mean,
Yep.
person with an ADHD diagnosis can be an absolute gem of a player to have in the team, but they
Yes.
might need specific help or structure around them to be able to perform at their best. That
Yep.
might look very different for Christian, or for you. Like it could
Mm-hmm.
be completely different. So also being able to sort of, while that's not a mental health issue, or having a neurodiverse diversity, or having a condition of autism or ADHD, it can still affect you. And I've had seen how people around me have struggled with that, because you couldn't really add up the dots. And before I realized, oh, this is because of that and that. And
Yes.
again, the workplace, for the workplace, with a company hat on, the result is the same. If you're not getting the most out of somebody, or somebody isn't able to perform or struggling, if it's because of ADHD or autism or
Hmm.
stress or anxiousness, the result is the same. They're not performing, at their best, which is ultimately why people go to work, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, you're spot on. It comes down to the part that you mentioned earlier, where feeling safe within that workplace, no matter whether it is neurodivergence or whether it's you're struggling with mental health, having a place where you feel that you're heard or you're understood, and you've got the right tools and support around you to be able to tap into whatever it is that can help you going forward. So absolutely, I completely
Yeah,
agree with that. It's that space. It's almost like a culture that needs to be created, isn't it? That we all work
yeah,
together, we all understand each other, and we all have our quirks, we all have our uniqueness, we all have our pitfalls that we struggle with. But I think having that ability to work with each other definitely will create a much better mentally healthy workplace.
yeah,
It's a guarantee. It
yeah,
absolutely is.
100%.
Absolutely. Okay. So in your eyes, in your what you've seen, what's the change, or what's one of the changes that you think either needs to be removed from the workplace, that that doesn't serve the workplace anymore, or doesn't serve the narrative of what we're trying to achieve of better mental health and a healthy culture? What's something that an absolute must needs to be removed from workplaces these days?
I think it's a really tricky question to
Yep.
answer, because it's sort of, it's not like one specific thing. I think
Yep.
you could say creating workplaces where you have this sort of sense of psychological safety, or everyone can belong, and everyone come as you are, and the D&I aspect, which you would see
Yeah.
in any job ad now. There's always a section on this, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, in practice, the person feeling that, who joins on the other side, it's all good to put it in a job ad, but what's actually those actions that I come in and I feel like, what, my quirks, as we
Yep.
said, they're accepted here. I can be myself. Like, that is very, very hard.
Yes.
When we practice something called teamship at Electrolux, which is sort of along these lines, a little bit how we, how do we work with each other? How do we manage ourselves, and how do we conduct ourselves, and how do we collaborate, and all these things, right? And it's a great, foundation, and the way that we preach our sort of culture. But that
Hmm.
still doesn't obviously mean that in every team there's this sense, right? Because you will have some teams that are high performing with a lot of safety, and
Yep.
some others, right? Um, so, I mean, I think one element is obviously, I think a lot of it comes down to leadership,
Yep.
the human aspect, and no AI or tech in the world can replace having a good
Yes.
leader, right?
Yes.
Um, I think historically, there's still in a lot of companies the notion of how you promote people to lead and be managers is not
Hmm.
based on their leadership but their performance. That's been there's been you've done really, really well, you've done so well, you've done this, that, you get a bigger role, and that often comes with leading a team, right?
Yep.
Them, setting a world record in selling whatever they're selling has nothing to do with their ability to lead somebody through a crisis, or look at COVID. Not that much pressure that put on managers all over to deal with a new situation, right?
Hmm.
And we never really know, right?
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
would say that the best thing probably companies can do is to have a really good kind of method in place for how you promote people to leadership positions, and then training them in the importance of them as leaders, in being close to their team, being present, understanding, listening, all this, right? But even so, it comes down to personality of people, because 10 people can take the same training, but ultimately some people will be more people focused, some people will be more introvert, some people will be more goal oriented, and some people will be more detailed, right? Like, they're just sort of different how people are. But I do think that starting with the right people in in leadership positions, and companies are working on that, it's probably the best thing you can do, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the whole thing of if you've got the right leadership, it trickles down into the team, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Again, goes back down to that culture. And if you've got the right person at the top of that culture ladder, then
Yeah.
that really does help with making the team feel united almost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's building that feeling between the whole office, whether it's office
Yeah.
or hybrid working.
Yeah. No, exactly right. And it's about having managers who can understand that, okay, well, I have this individual now, they have a different need to that individual. So, that person might need to be working from home all the time, or that person might need to sit in a separate office because they get distracted, or that person is having a rough time at home. So maybe
Yeah.
take a few days of compassionate leave, like, using your sort of your intuition a little bit, and your in how you manage people and not manage everyone the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think secondly, it's also from the company to provide a sort of comprehensive support. The concept of, medical evaluation or stress management, or, kind of, occupational health, basically,
Yep.
and sort of corporate kind of healthcare benefits focus on this. And there's loads of good examples. We have in Sweden, we collaborate with a company called Feel Good, for example, which
Okay.
provide these services that I've interacted with, and I think they've helped people around me and close to me, through transitions and through periods, right? So I think, and that will be different in any country, if it's the US or the UK or Sweden, but the company kind of having a, okay, I have, what help is there for me to be had?
Yep.
I'll contact my manager, my HR business partner maybe, but then what help can I have? So the three of, the HR VP, the manager, and the individual can sort of then look at it, right? What help could we have externally from, professionals ultimately?
Yeah, of course. And on that topic, have you seen things that you can yourself say, absolutely, that definitely helps? There's lots of things. There's EAPs, there's access to counsellors, offices
Yeah.
sometimes do your pizza Fridays, or they do lots of different things. In your eyes, and from what you've seen or experienced, is there any of those that stand out that definitely do help more than others, or are we still on the
I mean, I
hunt
think
for that perfect thing?
well, I think that the problem with, in a way, the problem with that question is that that no individual is the same, right?
Yes.
So somebody might need, free flowing beer and pizza Fridays to stay
Yeah.
happy at work, and somebody just needs somebody to talk to.
Yes.
But what I do think is to find the mix of those things. So like an occupational health provider can obviously provide you with, okay, so where are you right now? Okay, you're feeling stressed, you can't sleep. Okay, so let's get you medical first to check out everything's fine with your values and your blood and so on, right? And then you get somebody to talk to you about your sleeping, your stress, and then also to get somebody to talk to you about your stress in the workplace and how to manage that. And then obviously feeding that back to the manager and saying, this is our evaluation, this is what we think you should be doing, and kind of giving them steps, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that is more concretely what obviously an occupational health provider will provide you with and do.
Yeah.
Then the other element, of course, is maybe more about the sort of the Pizza Fridays. I guess is more on a team building, kind of doing something for the individual to be part of the group. I mean, and that's very culturally very different. I mean, looking tech. I mean, it's pretty. If you go to many of the big tech names of the world, it's pretty standard to have free breakfast, unlimited drink in the offices, really cool office spaces. Everyone will probably top of mind think of Google,
Yeah.
what they did and so on, right? And that's also, I mean, that's expected there now.
Wow.
That's what
Okay.
they expected. That's part of the perk, that you never need to bring breakfast or lunch. You just get up and go to work, and then the
Wow.
company, the policy for them is like, you show up, and deliver. We take care of you while you're here. That's the underlying notion, that these tech companies work with. You get up and get dressed, go to work, deliver here, and we will take care of you while you're here. If that's
Wow.
energy drinks, coffees, breakfast, whatever it is, right? And in a way, it's a really, it's a bit of a cynical way of thinking about it, but it's also a bit of a win-win, because you don't really need to think about when you have breakfast, because there will be sandwiches and hot stuff, whatever, in the office. You can have your coffee and everything there, right? That would never sort of, a company like Electrolux, I mean, it would be very hard to have that sort of culture there, because we're different and we're more spread out and we're
Yeah.
bigger in all these countries, right? But so I think it can culturally be look very, very differently. It could be all the way from managers having, team lunches to team breakfasts to, going out doing activities socially. Like, some teams you will, go out, have after work, drinks, whatever. Some teams will never do that. Like it's obviously very different. But I think, again, this is where it comes back down to the individual,
Yep.
because it's the manager who leads the team that will know them the best of what they need. If they're a bunch, if they're 10 introverts, there's probably no point in going out for team drinks because nobody will
Yes.
talk anyway, right?
Absolutely.
But if you have a 10 extroverts, you probably need to do something because these guys will probably be dying to talk to each other, right? So it's a lot of it is down to the individual and finding the personality, but also trying to then, I've always tried to build teams that are different. You have a little bit of everything because then the dynamic comes together where you have some introverts who will be paired up and talking a lot to extroverts and so on, right? And then finding, the balance of rhythm through there. So it's, it's very hard to say what the best thing is, but but if you take a more of a, put the corporate or the company hat on, I do think that having, a policy or working with occupational health and have a comprehensive offering for these people who need the help is, in this day and age, is an non-negotiable, I would say.
Absolutely.
Then, I mean, thirdly, and this is where it's interesting, as I alluded to before, there is now technology kind of emerging on the market to kind of flag for you people that are on the edge, right?
Yeah.
And it can be behavior. You would have elements of this in that Microsoft's offering with these digests, like how many emails are you replying to? Who do you reply to the most? When do you reply? Working hours and so on, right? So there are obviously now, with the introduction of how we can make assessments of big data sets, or within also the emergence of AI that can recommend or notice patterns, there is some pretty cool tech that I've seen coming up now on the market that are looking into basically trying to flag and saying, here are 10 individuals at this point in time that, based on our metrics, are on the the verge of, it's a little bit like when your car is telling you,
Yep.
take a break, or stop for coffee break because you're all over the place in your lane, right?
Yep.
It's a little bit the same concept, but obviously from a working perspective. And I think that's quite interesting, because then if you can stop that before it gets too far, or before the person, because often you catch people when they're crashing.
Yep.
Typically somebody's like, they've already fallen down the hill, they've already crashed. You can't do
Absolutely.
anything now, right?
Yeah.
It's about catching them before they tumble down the hill. It's like when they're approaching their peak, that's when you need to lead them, down backwards, not forwards and then over the peak and then tumbling down, right?
Absolutely. It's almost like a maintenance thing, isn't it? It's keeping a track of things. And that's
Yeah.
something that's like I do therapy work, so I work with clients on a one-to-one basis. And what I try to teach them is to maintenance rather than needing me. It's maintain things so that their mental health stays in a good place.
Yeah.
And they don't have as many crashes or as many burnouts or as many crisis moments and I suppose that's the same thing within the workplace. It's managing that on that kind of scale before anybody gets to that point where they desperately need somebody. We need to put those tools into place to try and maintain everything for them.
Yeah. And I also, I mean, on what you said now, what's also interesting is obviously the concept of people who have once crashed and burned, or come out the other side of that.
Yeah.
Will always have like the build up to getting there again. They will never be as resilient as they were before, right? And I read some interesting studies on this, like basically kind of saying companies should be aware of people who have struggled with mental health issues and will burn or whatever before, because then they will, it's easier for them to end up there again with not the right support.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's like how do you quantify and how do you measure that? But it's an interesting concept where once you've sort of broken that sort of barrier once, it's easier to break it again.
Yes.
Where for a lot of people, because of how it still is in our society, I think a lot of people will cover it up.
Yep.
They wouldn't. Very few people are strong enough to talk openly about it, saying, "Hey, I was burnt out. I was crying all day, and I spilled my glass of milk." And I mean, and I cried. And I mean, very few people will have the capacity to talk jokingly or openly about it, right? For a lot of people, it's hush hush. They might tell their closest, people, but a lot of you keep that typically to yourself.
Yeah.
But if you put the company hat on, it's almost like the company should always benefit from knowing that, so you can be more aware that this person might need a bit more help in periods with, maybe go occasionally to stress management or so on, right?
Yeah, of
And I
course.
think that element is not even spoken about at all. And I remember I have somebody really close to me who over 10, 15 years ago struggled with burnout, and she said that it was never the same for her. Like her stress levels they never got back to where they were. So she was always now super conscious, right? And I think that's a really interesting concept, or even a concept, like thing to just be aware of, that it might not be the same for you again.
Yeah.
But it's not really spoken about, and because people are so typically protective about talking about it.
And it's fascinating, isn't it, how even now, even though the world talks about these kind of things more, it is still a hush hush thing. And it's still something that we've been talking about mental health for years now, and yet things, in my eyes, aren't necessarily getting a lot better. We're still experiencing problems, and it's almost like something has to take hold to start to create a change within workplace or even at home, and finding that balance and stress management and being able to deal with those things. Now, in the terms of that, when you think about that, in your eyes, whose responsibility do you think it is for building resilience or building better mental health within the workplace, and how do they go about that? Is it solely down to the company? Is it solely down to the managerial parties? Is it a collective of the company, the managers, and the individual as well? Who does that fall to?
I mean, I think it's hard to, whatever way you would look at it, I think it's hard to get away from the importance of the individual.
Yeah.
The individual it's always going to be key. How open are you to listening to what somebody's telling you?
Yeah.
For a lot of people, maybe in the first stage of burnout is denial. No, it's not. I just need to, right?
Yep.
And I had somebody who said to me the first time they were, in the first therapy session, kind of realizing they were on burnout. He had said something like, "Oh, I need to go. I have a meeting now. Like I can't follow through on this.
Yep.
I have something I need to do, right?" And then the therapist was like, "Yeah, this is probably the problem,
Yes.
So the individual, I think, is key, both outside in perspective, self-awareness, and also an openness to wanting to be helped, because not everyone are not being able to be helped because they might not be ready to be helped yet, right?
Yep.
So the individual, for sure, right?
Yes.
Will play the biggest part of this.
Before we continue with the rest of the podcast, I've got something incredibly valuable to share with you. We've just completed and recorded a transformative 25-minute video masterclass outlining key strategies that can dramatically improve workplace mental health for you and your business. And trust me when I say this isn't just another cookie-cutter wellness plan or a generic motivational talk. This masterclass is backed by cutting-edge science, decades of hand-on experience, and actionable insights. I guarantee you'll walk away with practical strategies that you can implement immediately to make a tangible difference in your workplace. And as a special offer, whether you decide to dive into the masterclass now or later, I'm offering a complimentary 30-minute implementation session to help you put these ideas into practice. So head on over to absolutemind.app/masterclass to watch or listen. I promise it will revolutionize your approach to workplace mental health and provide you with a new perspective, renewed energy, and actionable plans to create a healthier work environment.
But then at the point of where the individual is saying, "Hey, listen, I need help," that is where the manager and the company needs to come in, right?
Yep.
And that's where the other thing that we spoke about, that is when the individual, the leader, becomes a key person to push things forward, getting approval for occupational health, understanding, listening, changing, adapting, like being present for that individual in whatever way they need, right? And also then that's where the company needs to have a set of tools, in their arsenal to be able to help. Okay, so this person needs this, we have occupational health there, and then we can provide this, and and so on, right? So it's like the individual obviously needs to. I mean, I think it will be hard for for the company or a manager to stop somebody to going on burnout or sick leave or struggling with mental health if they don't want to be actively helped, if they're sort
Yes.
of resisting.
Yeah.
But at the point where the individual is there and realizing this and kind of saying, "Hey, listen, I'm struggling with anxiousness or depression or stress, or I'm on the brink of burning out."
Mm-hmm.
That is where the company and the manager then need to be able to have a clear plan, what to do.
Yeah. Absolutely, and absolutely, I agree. It starts with the individual first, and I suppose again it comes back down to that's very much like a therapy setting of that individual needs to acknowledge first that there's an issue that they're experiencing,
Yeah,
to then be able to go, hey, I need to reach out, or I need to learn some tools and strategies I need to be able to implement, again, that foundation level, that maintenance level, so that they can catch themselves before they fall. And then the managerial and the company are there for that further help should they need it.
yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, of course. Now, in your eyes, how do you feel that things have changed over the years within workplace? Because we're obviously in a very different world now from what it was years ago,
Yeah.
and mental health is definitely being talked about a lot more. But do you feel that the workplace has changed much over the years? Do you feel that we've still got a long way to go? Are we on the cusp of a
Yeah.
transformation, or what's your view on that?
Well, I think that as with everything in this world, news and media and trends come and go very quickly, right?
Yep.
Things blow over very quickly. You can take look at the reporting of just something like the Ukraine war when that came about. It was all the time, and now you hardly see it. Same with COVID. It was very much for a long period of time, then it kind of blew over, right? And everything is there's a lot or it's like nothing, right?
Yep.
And rewind to 2019, pre-COVID, I wouldn't say you would hear a lot about it. Like, obviously there you would have people on sick leave and so on, but it wasn't that prominent necessarily, and not what people talking about. And then COVID came, and apart from the health issues, of course, that brought with vaccines and being sick and all this, obviously a lot of it, you'd see loads of research on mental health issues in the workplace, at home, people were locked away and all this, right? And like on a forum like LinkedIn, you'd see research all over the time, all over the place, right,
Mm-hmm.
about this. But now that's come and gone, right?
Yep.
And now LinkedIn is all about AI now, like
Yes.
now so it changes, and that's what's so hard. So because for a lot of these people who struggled during COVID with mental health or these things, they might still be in that place, or maybe still have not recovered. But
Mm-hmm.
so the world to some extent has moved on, right?
Yes.
Or talking about something else. So in that sense, I would say a lot of things probably came out of COVID in regards to the space and the knowledge and research and maybe tools the companies can provide. But would I say that it strikes me as something that companies are talking a lot about? And if you're looking at the social media as form, as a benchmark, not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at neurodiversity in the workplace. Unless you're actively looking for it, you would actively search for something, either being on Instagram or
Mm-hmm.
on LinkedIn or on Google or whatever. How much do you see about that?
Yes.
There's like 10 ways to implement your AI strategy, but like you never see 10 strategies for working with people who suffer from, let's say, ADHD. You don't see that necessarily,
Yeah.
at least not as much, right?
Yeah, of
And so there's
course.
something there with how trends and news flows, which is a bit scary to some extent because of how things quickly blow over. But to your point, I think we're in a better place than we were in 2019 in regards to tools and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't necessarily say that we've taken massive steps forward in regards of awareness and building resilience and arming our managers and individuals. So
So we've still got a way to go. In
I
essence,
would
still
say
got a
so,
way to go.
definitely.
Absolutely. And so kind of coming to the end of a discussion, we've kind of touched on a lot of things, but what's if you were to step into a workplace and you were able to say, do you know, this workplace looks like it's a healthy workplace to be, what would that be? What would it look like? How would it be run? You know, what would the employees be doing, and how would they be looking after themselves? What's the idea of a healthy workplace?
I mean, a workplace can look very different. I mean, a
Yep.
workplace can be building a house, building a cool app
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, or, you know, whatever. I mean, I mean, how many occupations can you list? So
Mm-hmm.
workspace can be very different. So my view on it is obviously very much based on sort of the team that I run, which is an office-based team and spread out over 5, 6 countries and so on, right? So, I mean,
Yep.
you know, it's a different perspective, and I don't know how how do you lead a team of builders to be happy building a house. I wouldn't pretend that I know that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But fundamentally, regardless of what the tools are to make them happy versus, let's say, somebody sitting in an office in front of a computer all day, is that it's a concept of probably some sort of element of psychological health and feeling appreciated in the team, and feeling that there's a harmony and a respect in the team for making mistakes or for being able to speak up or getting support, right? So investing in building a team, while this is a bit of a cliche these days, but you have to have a team, and like there's no I in team and all
Yep.
this. But my experience is that managers who manage to build strong teams and have a good atmosphere and climate and respect and so on, and lead with openness and trust and so on, that will help individuals massively. That will
Mm-hmm.
set a good foundation. And then you might still have people who need certain alterations, like, oh, I need to sit quietly. Okay, so we'll sit you over there then, where you can close the door behind you and focus and so on. Or you might need somebody who might need something else, right?
Yep.
But I do fundamentally, my personal belief, being somewhat of a people oriented, a focused individual, is like a well organized and well functioning team with those kind of elements in there will work across any workplace.
Okay.
It looks very different, but if individuals can thrive and respect each other and collaborate and work and all these things, that
Yep.
will just set a good foundation. And then you have all the tools and the things outside.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I think that would be my take on it. And then, but then again, depending on what kind of work it is, it will the tools that you might need to use to get there might be very different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do definitely believe of a constellation of individuals, and putting an environment and sense in the team that makes people feel valued and safe and that they belong. That can never be, in my world, a negative thing.
Yeah. Well, it goes back down to what we said earlier. It is that culture of just people working together,
Yeah,
working with each other, helping each other, and it does. It comes down to culture, and if you can create that healthy culture within a workplace, no matter what kind of workplace that be, whether it's all Zoom meetings, whether it's hybrid working, whether it's within an office and you're all working together, if you've got a culture of people that understand, talk to each other, and can communicate effectively, no matter what's going on in life, inside or outside, then there is that balance of we all understand one another.
yeah, no, definitely.
So I think it's quite clear that the culture is quite an important factor. And hopefully one day we'll get there with the workplace being a really good place to be, and everyone feels settled. But I do believe we've still got quite a way to go. There's a lot of things
Yeah.
that we still need to learn, but hopefully we'll all
No, and I
get
mean,
there
I think there's
eventually.
also loads of success stories out there. It doesn't
Absolutely.
all, need to be doom and gloom. Like, you have companies who have amazing,
Yes.
strategies and policies for this, right? So there's plenty of, leading stars out there that to look at and learn from, right?
Mm-hmm.
But of course, while we should be saluting them for the great job they're doing, it's probably hence this conversation now more important to focus on, where we can get better, right?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think we've got everything that I need for our podcast. So thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for having this phone call with me today. And I'm looking forward to putting it all together and getting it into the podcast. Now, as we wrap up this episode, I again want to offer my sincere appreciation to Christian for his time. And I want to leave you with a message of empathy and empowerment. We've explored various initiatives and increasing pressures on companies to support mental health in the workplace. It's clear that organisations have a significant role to play, and there's much work being done to create safer, more supportive environments for all employees. From leadership training to comprehensive health benefits and the use of emerging technologies, progress is being made. However, it's equally important to recognise the shift happening on a personal level. More and more people are becoming aware of their own mental health and the simple yet effective ways that they can improve it. This self-awareness is crucial. It's about understanding your own needs, recognising when you need help, and knowing the small steps that you can take to maintain and enhance your mental well-being. This is especially important as so many of us work from home, isolated from the support that's offered by those around us. By taking proactive measures, whether it's practicing mindfulness, seeking support when needed, or simply just ensuring that you have a healthy work-life balance, you can not only avoid suffering, but actually thrive. Remember, mental health is a journey, it's not a destination. It's about continuous self-care, compassion, both for yourself and for those around you. So my takeaway for you today, take note and care of your own mental health, and at the same time, keep a compassionate eye on those around you who may need some support. So thank you for joining us on Your Absolute Mind. Let's continue this journey together, supporting each other, being mindful of ourselves, and where we can, enabling those and around us to become mentally healthy. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other, and I'll see you in the next episode.